Every once in a while, if you're lucky, you have the opportunity to meet someone who makes a profound impact on your life, who changes things for you. That was Joe Biederman for me. He emerged from his own iron crucible of suffering and led the way for us, especially early on in the field of ADHD. He was a giant, sparkle in his eye, a quick wit, a compassionate and caring physician.
And I also like to acknowledge that he was extremely inspiring to other researchers, opening up new areas, for example, his work on the link between ADHD and bipolar disorder, his work on subclinical ADHD, and many pharmacological studies.
I had the good fortune of working with him between 1992 and 2001 when he was director of the joint Mass General McLean Hospital Pediatric Psychopharmacology Program. Joe was the primary mentor for my K Award, and his only concern was that I might be a little too senior for it, but I scored amazingly high thanks to Joe, and it forever altered my career pathway. I want to thank Joe for all that he's done and the entire team at Mass General to contribute to child and adolescent psychiatry and to our professional lives.
Dr. Biederman was one of the first to recognize that ADHD in childhood continued into adulthood, and that ADHD often accompanied psychiatric comorbidity. He was a highly successful researcher and will be remembered for his efforts in advancing the field of ADHD. Above all, he was a highly thought of clinician who was sought out by people from around the world because of his impeccable reputation for excellent clinical care. Indeed, he was a fierce advocate for his patients and their families.
When I think of Dr. Joseph Biederman, I think of 3 or 4 main attributes. First of all, I think of his honesty, how he would let you know how he felt, usually immediately, not always in the kindest words, but you knew that he was being honest. Secondly, I really appreciated his sense of humor. He was incredibly funny, sometimes at inopportune times, but it related to third characteristic, which is his humanity. And last, and probably most important, I think about his passion for improving patient care for individuals with ADHD through research and then transmitting it into patient care directly.
The field of child psychiatry certainly loses a great scientist. The place of Professor Biederman in science is safe because so many contributions he has given to the field over decades of dedicated work. I always appreciated the clarity of his thinking and the availability that he had to discuss his finding and his conclusion. Indeed, oftentimes he has very strong opinion, and some of them were subject to discussion, but he was open to that. I always appreciated his contribution. And again, I'm very sorry that we lost him.
I have had the good fortune to call Joe Biederman a colleague, mentor, and friend for nearly 40 years. Joe taught me many things that made me the researcher that I never would have been in my life without having known him. But more importantly, because of his passion for helping children, for doing evidence-based research, he has helped literally millions of people around the world through his own research, his own clinical work, and the dissemination of all his work to clinicians around the world. It's really impossible to overestimate the contributions that Joe has made to the field.
E em minhas atividades profissionais com pacientes portadores de TDAH, as contribuições do Dr. Joseph Biederman, dos maiores psiquiatras infantis do mundo, são inquestionáveis. Seu legado é gigante e a perda de sua presença entre nós será sentida por muito tempo. Estou distante fisicamente de todos vocês, assim como estava distante dele. Porém, a internet faz com que nos aproximemos, neutralizando as distâncias entre nós. Meus sentimentos a todos os familiares e colegas que com ele estiveram em aproximações profissionais. Obrigado por me permitirem dedicar alguns instantes para homenageá-lo nesse momento.
I met Joe over 20 years ago. We developed some pretty compelling CME education in child, adolescent, and adult ADHD. Joe taught me most of what I know about the disorder and instilled in me something he was so very passionate about, the data. The data has to control the narrative and tell the story. An opinion without clinical evidence is just conjecture. Joe was a mentor, an advisor, and a friend.
My work in Mexico as head of Proyecto DA allowed me to be close to him in professional and personal way. Dr. Biederman became a key mentor for me. He participated with us in several international meetings, sharing his experience and helping us to do a better work for people with ADHD. I feel honored to have him as a friend, as I met an outstanding, talented, kind man, always willing to collaborate with us. Dr. Biederman's legacy leaves a deep mark on me and Proyecto DA in Mexico as well, for which I feel grateful for meeting him. I also recognize his valuable contribution in the field of mental health all over the world.
First met Joe over 30 years ago when, like many people who first met him, the meeting began with a criticism of him about one of my ideas or one of the papers I had written. I came to learn that he was the consummate professional, despite sometimes how he came across to others. He was a wonderful associate editor in the Journal of Attention Disorders. I used to joke that he would slash and burn. I could send him a dozen articles, many of which didn't require publication or didn't warrant publication, but needed some feedback, and he would provide it to those authors. He was a friend, he was a colleague, he was a brilliant man whose contributions will live on for eternity, as it were.
He was a giant among those of us who do research and clinical work with ADHD. It was a great privilege for me, as for my colleagues, to learn from him and from the large body of research which he contributed to our field. He was an example of an extraordinarily perceptive scholar who did very careful work and did much to enhance the field and our understanding of ADHD in children and in adults.
I had the opportunity to train with Dr. Biederman's group in 2003 and 2005. This fellowship had a tremendous impact on my career. It is a rich experience that I carry with me every day within my practice. His contribution would be long remembered. He pioneered a whole field of practice, pediatric psychopharmacology, which changes the life of severely ill children every day.
Joe emulated what was so elegantly stated by the anthropologist Margaret Mead. Don't think that a committed, thoughtful person can't change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that does. Joe simply changed the world. Joe was simply an academic superstar, a rock star, a pioneer, a maverick, a master clinician, a fierce advocate, a colleague, and a friend. I have to say, though, that he was also a closet comedian. And just looking at his picture, I think of so many pithy and hilarious comments and witticisms he made over the years.
I've often heard it said that Joe did not suffer fools lightly, and I think that's true. But not because he was a mean or arrogant person, but because he was in a hurry and he was impatient, I think, to relentlessly advance the field of child psychiatry. And in spite of that, he had a warm and generous side that many of us knew. For me personally, one way that manifested was his willingness for years to write letters of recommendation or support for me for promotions and travel awards and things like that. And I will always be very grateful for that. I think it's hard to estimate the number of people on whom he's had a positive impact, clinicians and researchers, a generation of trainees, but most importantly, the patients that he is positively impacted over the years, both directly and indirectly.
Dr. Biederman took the time to speak with me on several occasions at time out in the meetings to encourage me to continue in my quest to meet these children's needs in the absence of adequate child psychiatrists. I would just like to say, like I'm sure everyone else is, that he's a giant that led us in the right direction. And hopefully we can all stand on the shoulders of the giant and develop even better pediatric mental health care.
Joe was more than part of our professional lives. He actually was part of the personal lives of many of us involved in the care of children with ADHD. Absard in particular was close to his heart because he had great respect for those who toiled in the trenches to try and help children and adults who were affected with ADHD. His scientific achievements were impressive and always focused on really important information, the kind of information that was necessary to educate affected individuals, to support practitioners, to provide better care, and to lobby on behalf of individuals with ADHD for more adequate services. His untimely death is a blow to each and every one of us, but his legacy, impressive legacy, will live on.
Brilliant, driven, inspiring, and funny. When I think of the words that I reflect on with Dr. Biederman, these are the many faces that I think of throughout my career. Unbeknownst to me, through happenstance, chance, karma, my journey at that point was that Dr. Biederman was my mentor. I could spend a week with him at ACAP, following him to meetings, watching his influence on the field, seeing him think about driving the field forward when it came to ADHD research, improving the care of children with mental health struggles.
We will deeply miss him, and we will, at the other hand, be able to build further progress in ADHD on his fantastic output, his creative ideas. And we will continue our work to improve future for ADHD patients and their families in his spirit.
I loved you and admired you for almost 30 years. You were the sun, giving life and warmth to the earth. You were a Gulliver in a world of Lilliputs. And still you were generous and kind and warm-hearted to all of us. May you rest in peace. We will never forget you, and we will continue where you left it.
Joe, thank you for all that you've done for the field, for me personally. You will be missed.
Thank you, Dr. Biederman.
Joe, goodbye, and God bless you. You will always be in our heart.
We can say, Joe, that you left this world a much better place because you were here.
He will be greatly missed.
May beautiful memories be a comfort to all his family.
His amazing legacy will live on forever, and I'm very glad to be a part of that.
Myself and our team at Mass General will miss Joe dearly.
This last week at the Absard meeting in Florida, Joe would have been very happy to see the enthusiasm and to see the characteristics that he embodied, and would feel rest assured that there's a new generation of folks who want to carry on the mission that he has led us on.
So all I can say from the Absard family to Dr. Biederman and his family is thank you. Thank you for being part of our life. Thank you for being part of our family. Thank you for being part of our inspiration.
Thank you, Joe.
I am privileged to have known him and to work with him, and I am very saddened by his loss, and I wish his family well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Biederman. I will miss you.
It was a privilege to know him, and he will be dearly missed.
On a positive note, we are so honored that the chair that Joe helped establish at MGH is being renamed the Joseph Biederman, MD Chair in Pediatric Psychopharmacology, solidifying his contribution to the world in perpetuity. This chair will pass to one of his esteemed mentees here.